So right now it's 11:54 p.m. Pacific time on Saturday, September 17th. So this is going to be a quick preview video of the currency markets for next week. I think I'm gonna do this video in two halves. The first halves, I'll go over the currency markets, and the second half, I'll go over some of the US equities. They were some interesting setups at the end of last week, so I think they might be worth going over. So let's first take a look at the currency markets. I've already highlighted a few pairs I'm keeping an eye on. The orange and the green tickers here are some of the better setups, and the purple ones are I'm just keeping an eye on. So starting off with the euro pairs, the euro has been quite strong in the last couple of weeks. Not as strong as the US dollar or Swiss franc, but it's made kind of a rebound in the last few weeks. So that's why you see a lot of euro pairs are trading in kind of a range. But Euro USD is still set up to break this low here at 0.987. Yeah, there's not been much support, but also not a huge trend. It's been kind of stair stepping down on the weekly chart. Euro pound is probably one of the better setups if you're looking to trade the euro. These two European currencies against each other. Euro has been quite strong against the pound the last 2 or 3 weeks. So as you can see, the last week's candle closed above this doji here and above the previous high. So this could be a breakout on the weekly chart. Here you can see the daily. So there's about 100 pips or so until the next area where it might get resisted, and that was the floor, 0.8863, before it broke down in like January 2021. So it could keep going up to that level before it gets interrupted, but it also has been going up pretty fast in the last several weeks. It could retrace. You'll just have to keep an eye out on the daily chart to see when it does. For example, it could open down on Monday or Tuesday. Yeah, because after each one of these big impulse moves, it has been stuck for a few days before it moves again. Let's see, Euro JPY could break out as well. It's testing the previous high at 144.15. So it made a bit farther last week, but still was resisted and formed somewhat of a doji. But it hasn't gone all the way down. It could still end up breaking. So this is another one you could check for potential setups. Let's see, Euro Swiss franc is also set up like Euro USD. It's very bearish on the weekly chart, but also at a support level. So it could break this week if the euro ends up being weak or the Swiss franc being strong. Yeah, so the pound pairs were moving quite similarly to the euro. In the last week or two, I would say the pound has been more bearish. So yeah, pound USD is kind of similar to euro USD, but did it close below the previous low? I think it closed just on it, but this weekly candle did engulf the range of the previous weekly candle. So there's a good chance it can still end up going down. Yeah, I don't think there's much more support for a while. So yeah, on the daily chart, you can see it did make another low on Friday. So yeah, this could be continued going downwards. Okay, pound AUD. This one's been bearish ever since it broke this triangle pattern, but it didn't break down cleanly. It was kind of retracing for the last week and the week before. But it is still bearish in the long term. So if it breaks one of the previous lows here, it could end up going down even further. Okay, let's check pound Swiss franc. So this one is in a consecutive bearish move for several weeks now. And this last close on Friday was below the previous low of 1.11161. So yeah, it's made a new all-time low since a very long time. So yeah, it could keep going down if the pound ends up weak in the next few days. So yeah, those are probably some of the better pairs in the euro and pound markets. So let's check against some of the US dollar markets. USD CAD, you can note that this last week was a bullish candle, and it closed above the previous high made on July 11th. So I may trade this pair, but I'm thinking also maybe not to, only because USD CAD kind of moves in tandem. They're both very similar markets or economies, but you can see from the price action, there hasn't been a wild swing like you see against some of the other strong and weak currencies. It's kind of been contained in this upwards channel, and my main concern is we're at the channel top, so it may not break out all the way. It could still sell off and come back to the lower side of this channel. So I'll kind of have to see on the daily chart. As you can see on Friday, it wasn't really a clean breakthrough either. There was some profit taking, and it caused the price to go back, even though it did close higher this entire week. So yeah, this is one to be a little bit cautious about. Let's check USDJPY. So this one was bullish for consecutive weeks, but it looks like it's found a top as of this last week here. Last week was a doji, and let's look at what exactly happened on the daily chart. So yeah, the daily chart's been resisted at the 145 level, this round figure. So yeah, we're not sure if USDJPY will end up breaking out. It is bullish on the long term, but it could consolidate a bit more before breaking out here. And even if you don't read the macroeconomic news behind interest rates or central banks, this is what the price action will tell you. But if you do pay attention, it's also kind of describing the trader sentiment behind the currency markets right now. I think in the last couple weeks, the Japanese central bank has come out and said that they are looking at propping up the yen potentially in the future. So I think it's just reflecting in the traders that, maybe they need to check how far the markets are willing to go, if it breaks out or not. So that's why you see a range potentially forming on the weekly chart. It could retrace back to the previous breakout high, 139, before going up, or it can stay in a range for a while before breaking up or down. So yeah, maybe the huge trend of JPY is just paused right now, waiting for further news. And I'll talk about that in just a moment, what kind of major events are happening next week. Okay, USD Swiss franc, I didn't tag this one, but it looks like it's in a range now. We've had some wild swings, both in the USD and Swiss franc in the last several months here. But yeah, it still looks like it's in this channel, but for the last 4 or 5 days, it's just been indecisive if it's gonna go down or stay where it is. So I'll probably be staying away from USD Swiss franc this next week. Okay, next is AUD USD. So this one is probably one of the cleaner setups. It looks like it's about to break the previous low. It's been resisted by this descending trend line since April of this year. But looking at this last week's candle, it did decisively close into the wick support range previously formed in July and September and end of August. So if the sellers continue on the daily chart to push it down, it could end up going down a lot more as the weekly sellers come in. So right now we are just at the support formed back in September 19 and August 19. So yeah, we'll have to see what this pair does on the open next week. So it could open strong and bounce up a little bit before going down. But yeah, this is one to watch for the next potential big trend in AUD USD. Let me look at USDJPY. So this one did break out the week before, but then this current week that closed, it's retraced to the previous breakout levels. So yeah, it could break this counter trend line and then go up. But I think it may be also dependent on what the JPY does. So okay, so another JPY pair that was recently trending but found a top. Looks like it was Swiss franc JPY, so similar to USD JPY. This market has been trending for many days until this last week. It's found a top here at 150.7, and it's retraced a bit. So yeah, this last week it did close below the previous lows 2 and 3 weeks ago. So it could consolidate and sell off a bit more, possibly even to 247 or 245 or 145 and 147. So yeah, it looks like the JPY trends are mostly paused right now, either retracing or just consolidating. And let me go over, there's going to be a lot of interest rate decisions next week. So I think China is going to have their interest rate decision on Monday evening. Let's see, Canada is having theirs on Tuesday morning. The US is going to have their first interest rate decision since Jackson Hole ended on Wednesday. So remember, there was not a interest rate decision last month in August. So a lot of traders are probably watching this event on Wednesday. And then also JPY has interest rate decision on Wednesday as well, in the evening if you're in Pacific time. So yeah, a lot of the major currencies are going to be having interest rate decisions next week. So there could be a fair bit of volatility if you're trading one of these pairs. Like I said, a lot of the reasons, you can see why the trends have kind of paused. It's probably leading up to this interest rate decision. So yeah, I don't know if I'll be trading this next week. It'll just kind of depend on what happens around the news. Okay, let me go over to some of the US stocks. Because there are interest rate decisions on the horizon the equity markets are going to be affected as well. And already from this last week's close, there was some movement. So this is the US 100, the NASDAQ index, and it looks similar, but I'll just go over this one first compared to the S&P 500 and Dow Jones. So on the weekly chart, we had a bearish candle, which fully engulfed the previous week's bullish candle. So I've noticed this pattern before. You can see I drew a trend line here, which was the support up until August 29th. So let me go to the daily chart so you get a better view of how it formed. But a lot of times you'll see this pattern on a reversal. So how it starts is there is this trend line that supports either bullish or bearish buying, and then you'll have a counter trend move which breaks the trend line and then comes back up to retest it as resistance and then goes back down. This is kind of a variation of a flat price breakout. So if you imagine just your regular head and shoulders pattern, let's take this example from back here in November to February of this year. You can see there was a price point breakout of 15518, and then as it broke, it came down to retest the same level as resistance before going down a lot further. So yeah, this current one you can see is just a slanted variation. Instead of one constant price over time, you have a varying price that's set by a trend line, and then you have the same breakout pattern occur where it first breaks out, comes back to retest, and then goes lower. So that is why it looks like the NASDAQ is set up to go lower after this Friday's close. It can potentially go all the way down to the previous low formed on June of this year. So it could potentially go down to 11,000 in that range. If you look at the S&P, it's the same pattern. Same thing with the Dow Jones. So all the US indexes are showing kind of this bearish pattern. And yeah, I noticed I also check some of the major stocks. So if you're looking at the major tech stocks, let me see, Google. So yeah, Google is bearish from this last week. It looks like it broke out of this trading range that started ever since May of this year. So yeah, the market for Google shares has been indecisive so far. But from this last week, we see that last week on Friday, it closed below the previous low in July and June. So there's a good chance it could break out. It hasn't broken out of the low cleanly yet, but this is just one tech stock. You can see Amazon, it's similar. It had this big sell-off retest, and then it looks like it could be going lower from this last week. Apple is probably the most bullish of all the tech stocks. It's still been supported by the Kijun-sen in the Ichimoku indicator. Let's see, Microsoft, this looks like it's going down. Same pattern. We had the close last week into the support, so you could say it's testing support right now, but it may break since the long-term trend is still down. Let me mention Facebook. This is another one that is breaking the support. So yeah, this is the monthly time frame, but it is closing into the lows made in April, March of 2020, and looks like it's breaking lower. So yeah, on the weekly chart, it did decisively close below the range that it was trading ever since June. And yeah, you can see on the daily chart when the breakout exactly started to happen. September 13th was a decisive close into the support area. No answer from the buyers on September 14th. September 15th, if you look closely, this kind of pin bar doji, you can see the buyers did come in, but the sellers continue to push them down, and the bar closed at the open on this day. And then, yeah, on Friday, it was another decisive move down. So for 3 days, the buyers were not able to support this price in the previous range. So yeah, I'd say Facebook is probably one of the more major companies with the decisive breakout. They've also had a previous sell-off earlier in this year. Let me also go over a couple other companies I noticed. So earlier was the broader US equities market with a focus on stocks. Let's take a look at some other blue chip companies. I think FedEx had earnings on Friday and they had a huge sell-off. The stock dropped 21% in a day. So yeah, FedEx looks like it's in a free fall on the weekly chart. Yeah, it broke all the way down. So I think I saw some news. The FedEx CEO forecasted much weaker activity in terms of shipping. So for their business, he is saying that, investors probably should not expect excessive profits. They may even come in below the expected earnings. So yeah, on Friday, there was a huge surprise in the earnings, and that's why it's all the way down. But looking at this is the DJT, Dow Jones Transportation Index. So you can look up what the components are, but it's a lot of airlines, a lot of shipping companies, kind of representative of how much people are willing to pay to move things around in the economy. So yeah, this index is closing into the support now. So over the next week or so, there could be some decisive moves if it breaks down. And this, you could say this index is maybe one of the better reads into what's going on in the real economy, since all of these companies are closely tied to how physical goods move. If you've been paying attention to the energy markets, oil has been strong for most of this year, and this could be, another lagging development. If energy prices are high, people are not shipping and traveling so much. So yeah, now it's catching up to the transportation companies. We just saw FedEx. I would guess UPS might have a similar move one of these days. It did already have a big sell-off on Wednesday to match. A lot of companies sold off on Friday from last week. So yeah, the question is if UPS will break support, this support zone. It may sell off into it gradually, or it may retrace. But yeah, this is one stock to keep an eye on. Ticker CAR. This is Avis Budget Group. They are a car rental company. This is the weekly chart for their ticker. You can see this head and shoulders pattern kind of forming. Actually, it's more of a wedge if you draw a trend line downwards. But you could also maybe call it a head and shoulders with a neckline, which is right here at 147. So Avis could have a sell-off if the daily sellers continue. So you can see this week was a bearish candle that fully engulfed the previous week, and it is right at support. And looking at the daily chart, you can see we already closed below the low made on September 7th. So the question is if the buyers are going to come in and support this market in the next few days. Yeah, I did see, because the weekly chart is in such a big wedge pattern, there could be a significant sell-off in this company stock too. So if it goes down to the previous high made in June of 21, that's another 35% drop. So yeah, there's could be a lot of bearishness setting up in the equities. I look at the currencies and equity markets, and it's just interesting to see how they're setting up. So yeah, a lot of movement is probably going to come after the interest rate decisions this week. So yeah, I'll be watching the currency markets and the equity markets to see what happens.